My name is Alexis Dunst. Right now, I'm sitting in my small but perfect apartment on a quiet Sunday morning. The light is soft, filtering through sheer curtains I picked out myself. There's a fresh pot of coffee brewing, the scent filling the air, and the walls of my kitchen are painted the exact shade of sage green that I spent weeks choosing years ago. The one that got painted over in gray by someone who thought she was taking my place. I'm 35 years old, and for the first time in my adult life, I wake up every day feeling completely, truly free. 15 years ago, I was a different woman. Young, hopeful, in love, and completely unaware of how much strength I would need one day. This is my story, the full, unfiltered truth. It's long because every moment mattered. The pain, the secrets, the waiting, the betrayal, the humiliation, and finally, the quiet, perfect victory. If you're listening to this, settle in. I'm not rushing a single part. I grew up in a small town where the horizon felt close. My father passed when I was 9, leaving my mom to raise me on a waitress's tips and pure determination. We weren't destitute, but money was always tight. My grandmother lived with us after Grandpa died. She was the strongest person I've ever known, widowed at 45. She worked as a bookkeeper until she retired, and she always had her own bank account. "Not secret money, Alexis," she'd say, tapping my nose. "Just mine. A woman needs something no man, no circumstance, no bad luck can ever take away." Those words became my compass. At 16, I knew I had to get out. Not because I didn't love my family, but because I wanted more than what that town offered girls like me. I loaded up on classes, graduated high school at 17, and moved an hour away to the city. My first job was at Henderson and Price, a busy law firm. File clerk. $9 an hour. I wore the same 3 outfits on rotation, ate peanut butter sandwiches for lunch, and rented a tiny studio with peeling wallpaper. But the paycheck had my name on it, and that felt like freedom. By 18, I'd proven myself. I caught errors in files, reorganized entire storage rooms, and started helping the paralegals. They promoted me to legal assistant. I learned how the world really worked: contracts, assets, trusts, separate property, how people protected what was theirs and how others tried to take it. I was good with numbers, exceptional with details, and I had a knack for seeing patterns others missed. That's where I met Vincent Mercer. He was 24, walking into a client networking event in a perfectly fitted suit, smiling like he already owned half the city. He had this energy, ambitious, magnetic, the kind that made people lean in when he spoke. He talked about real estate like it was art, finding undervalued properties, flipping them, developing land, building something that would last generations. He said things like, "I'm not here to make money, I'm here to build an empire." And he said it with such conviction that you believed him. I was refilling coffee near the dessert table when he approached me. "You look like someone who notices everything," he said. I laughed and admitted it was part of the job. We talked for an hour that night. He asked about my dreams. I told him I wanted stability, independence, a life I built myself. He said, "That's exactly what I'm going to give you." We started dating soon after. He took me to restaurants I'd never dreamed of, introduced me to wines I couldn't pronounce, talked about traveling the world together. He made me feel seen, chosen, important. At 19, on my birthday, he proposed with a ring he'd saved months for. We got married in a small garden ceremony, surrounded by flowers and family. My grandmother walked me down the aisle because my dad couldn't. As she placed my hand in Vincent's, she whispered, "Love him with your whole heart, Alexis, but always keep a piece just for you." Our son Tyler arrived when I was 20. Life became a whirlwind of sleepless nights, first steps, part-time shifts at the firm, and saving every extra dollar into my retirement account. Vincent was grinding, trying to get his business off the ground. There were lean years, living on ramen, driving used cars, borrowing from family to cover slow months. But we were a team. I believed in him. When I turned 23, everything changed. Vincent landed a major investor. Deals started closing fast. Money flowed in. One night he came home, eyes bright, and said, "Babe, I need you. Full time. Quit the firm. Come run the back office with me. I can't do this without someone I trust 100%. I thought about it for one day. The firm was my safety net, my own career path, but I loved him. I believed in the dream we'd talked about since we met, so I quit. For the next 11 years, I became the engine that kept his company running. I managed the books with absolute precision, every invoice, every expense report, every tax filing. I coordinated contractors, staged model homes for sale. I discovered I had a real eye for interior design, handled difficult clients, created marketing materials, planned open houses and launch events. I was up at 5 to get Tyler ready for school and worked until midnight reconciling accounts. I did it all while keeping our home perfect, cooking meals, attending his industry events on his arm, smiling for photos. Vincent was the face, the closer, the visionary who accepted awards and gave speeches. At every gala, every ceremony, I was introduced as Vincent's wife. When he thanked people on stage, he mentioned his team, his mentors, his unrelenting drive. Me, sometimes a quick and my supportive wife. Most times, nothing. At first, it felt like enough. We upgraded to a stunning house in a gated community. Luxury SUVs in the driveway. Private school for Tyler. Vacations to places I'd only seen in magazines. From the outside, we had arrived. But slowly, almost invisibly, things began to shift. Vincent started making major financial decisions without discussing them with me. He'd come home with stories of new opportunities that required big investments. He stayed out later and later, networking, client dinners, site visits. He began criticizing small things, the way I dressed for events, the meals I spent hours preparing, my weight after years of stress and little sleep. You've let yourself go a bit, Lex. You used to have so much ambition. What happened to that fire? That last one cut deepest. I was running his entire operation without a salary, raising our son, keeping every part of his life organized. But sure, I lacked ambition. I started noticing small discrepancies in the books. A withdrawal here, an unexplained transfer there. Round numbers that didn't match receipts. I asked once gently. He brushed it off. Investor perks, big picture stuff. Don't worry about it. So I stopped asking. But I never stopped watching. Then came the night that changed everything forever. It was about 3 years before he asked for the divorce. Tyler was 12, growing fast, asleep upstairs. Vincent texted at 9 p.m., saying he'd be home late, another investor meeting. By then, late usually meant 2 or 3 in the morning. I was in the home office, doing the monthly reconciliation like I always did. The house was silent except for the hum of the computer and the occasional creak of old wood. My tea had gone cold hours ago. I opened the bank statements and started matching transactions. That's when I saw the first strange transfer, $25,000, to an account number I'd never seen before. Then another from the month prior. Then a pattern stretching back further. My heart started racing. I pulled up older statements, searched keywords, followed every trail I could find. I stayed up until 3 in the morning, eyes burning, clicking deeper and deeper. By sunrise, I had printed pages spread across the desk like a crime scene, and the picture they painted was devastating. Our dream home, the one neighbors envied, the one we'd renovated top to bottom, wasn't paid off like I believed. Not even close. There were 3 mortgages. The original loan we took out years ago, $400,000. A second secret equity line taken out 4 years earlier, $350,000. A third 2 years ago. Another $350,000. Total owed, $1.1 million. Current market value, $850,000 on a good day. We were $250,000 underwater on the house alone. The business was worse. Lines of credit maxed out, $200,000 owed. Unpaid vendor invoices, $120,000. Back taxes, $85,000. Equipment financing coming due, $75,000. Even the luxury cars, the symbols of our success, were all leased, with massive balloon payments looming. I traced where the money had gone. Failed cryptocurrency investments, nearly $180,000 wiped out. Online gambling accounts, $75,000 lost. A luxury apartment rental in the city I knew nothing about. $60,000 in rent and furnishings over 2 years. Personal splurges that never made it home. Watches, Custom suits, private weekends, dinners, gifts, easily another 100,000. Vincent wasn't building an empire. He was funding a double life and bad bets with borrowed money, hiding the collapse behind a facade of success. Total liabilities, roughly $1.9 million. Total actual asset value, maybe $1.6 million if everything sold at peak price. We were hundreds of thousands in the hole and sinking faster every month. I sat in the dark office until the sun came up, surrounded by evidence, heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. My first instinct was pure rage. I wanted to wake him when he finally stumbled in at 2:30 am, reeking of expensive cologne that wasn't his usual. I wanted to scream, throw the printouts at him, demand answers. How long? Why? Who was she? What was the plan? But I didn't, because after 15 years I knew exactly who Vincent was. If I confronted him, he would deny everything. He'd say I was overreacting, that I didn't understand high-level investing, that the market would turn, that crypto was volatile but would rebound, that I was being paranoid. He'd turn it around, make me feel small for questioning him, maybe even accuse me of mismanaging the books even though I'd kept them perfect. And the most terrifying possibility, if he knew I knew, he might start looking at what I still had protected. Because I still had something separate, thanks to my grandmother. My old 401k from the law firm had grown quietly to around $180,000. I'd never touched it, never merged it. When she passed when I was 28, she left me $340,000 with explicit instructions in her will. For Alexis alone. I'd kept it in a separate account for 6 years. Never used it for household bills, vacations, or business expenses. Never commingled. Legally, completely, undeniably mine. So that morning, as Vincent slept off whatever night he'd had, I made a different choice. I gathered every printout. I hid them in a locked folder. I shut down the computer. And I began to plan, not for a loud fight, for a quiet, devastating victory. The first thing I did was call my Uncle Ray, a retired CPA who'd worked with my grandmother for decades. I drove to his house with my separate account statements and told him everything. Not dramatically, just facts. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he nodded slowly and said, "Your grandmother would be proud. You're doing exactly what she taught you. Let's make sure no one can ever touch this." Within 2 weeks, we created an irrevocable trust for Tyler. My retirement account and inheritance, over $520,000 total, went in. Tyler was the sole beneficiary. My name wasn't even listed as a contingent. Vincent's definitely wasn't. It was for college, a first home, emergencies, whatever our son needed in the future. And it was untouchable, even in the worst-case scenario. Next, I started documenting everything. Every month for the next 3 years, I printed fresh statements showing the growing debt, the hidden loans, the suspicious transfers. I made multiple copies. One set went into a safe deposit box under only my name. Another sealed envelope went to my sister's house with instructions. Open only if something happens to me. Digital backups on encrypted USB drives hidden in places Vincent would never look, like inside Tyler's old baby memory box in the attic. I became meticulous, almost obsessive. But on the outside, nothing changed. For 3 full years, I played the perfect wife. I smiled at dinner parties while knowing our entire life was a lie. I supported every new big project that required more borrowed money. I cooked his favorite meals, lasagna on Tuesdays, steak on Fridays. I planned family vacations we couldn't afford but charged anyway. I ignored the late nights, the unfamiliar perfume, the secretive phone calls. I let him criticize my appearance, my choices, my lack of drive without pushing back. Because I understood something crucial, men like Vincent always leave eventually. They get bored. They crave constant validation. They start believing they deserve someone younger, shinier, less complicated. Someone who doesn't know about the debt. Someone who still looks at them like they're a winner. I just had to wait until he made his move. And in those 3 years of waiting, I rebuilt myself in secret. I took online courses in interior design, the passion I'd set aside when I quit the firm to support him. I reconnected quietly with old colleagues from Henderson and Price. I strengthened my bond with Tyler, Movie nights, just the two of us. Long talks about his dreams, his fears, his future. I wanted him to know, no matter what happened between his father and me, he would always have one parent who was steady, honest, and fiercely protective. Slowly, quietly, I became strong again. Not the naive 19-year-old who believed love conquered all, but a woman who knew her worth, who had proof, who had a plan, and who was ready. Then, 3 months before everything ended, it finally happened. An ordinary Tuesday evening. I was in the kitchen making Vincent's favorite chicken parmesan because old habits die hard. He came home, set his briefcase down, and asked me to sit at the kitchen table. His face was calm. Businesslike, no sadness, no guilt. "I want a divorce," he said. "And I want the house, the cars, the business, everything. You can keep Tyler." He delivered it like he was placing an order at a restaurant. "I'll take all the assets. Hold the child, thanks." Like our 15-year-old son was an unwanted side dish he was generously letting me have. I stared at him for a long moment. Inside, my heart was steady, because this was the moment I'd prepared for 3 years. He truly believed he was walking away with a fortune. He had no idea he was demanding nearly $2 million in debt. Debt he'd hidden from everyone. Debt he'd created with every bad bet, every secret expense, every lie. Debt I was finally, legally, ready to hand over, with a smile. I nodded slowly. "Okay." And the performance of a lifetime began. The next 3 months were carefully designed to break me in front of everyone. He moved me into the guest room the very next day. My clothes were relegated to the smaller closet. My toiletries disappeared from the master bathroom. He canceled my personal credit card. We need to separate finances. Then the joint card. He retained Harold Whitfield, an expensive, experienced attorney known for favoring high-earning husbands. Papers started arriving, proposed settlements, aggressive timelines, demands for quick signatures. Everything moved at lightning speed, like he couldn't wait to erase me. Then his mother arrived, Lorraine Mercer. Perfectly styled silver hair, designer handbag, practiced sympathetic tilt of the head. She patted my hand and said, "You really should have tried harder to keep him interested, dear. Men have needs, you know." This from a woman whose own husband spent 7 days a week on the golf course specifically to avoid her company. She stayed for hours, offering advice while making it clear I had failed as a wife. A week later, Vincent started bringing her home. Brittany Sawyer, 27 years old. Worked in marketing at his company, of course. Blonde highlights, perfect nails, activewear that cost more than my weekly grocery budget. She walked into my kitchen like she already owned it, wearing my grandmother's heirloom apron, the one passed down for generations, while blending green smoothies in my blender. She was younger than my marriage, younger than my favorite handbag, but her smoothies were apparently elite. Vincent paraded her everywhere. They'd sit on my couch, feet up, watching my television, eating off my plates. He'd drape an arm around her right in front of me, laughing louder than necessary, like I was already invisible. The humiliation escalated daily. He suggested, politely, reasonably, that I should start looking for an apartment to give everyone space while we sort things out. Lorraine returned to help me pack. By help, I mean she went through every drawer, every closet, deciding what I was allowed to keep. Old clothes, fine, some family photos, a few, my grandmother's handwritten recipe box. She actually paused, fingers lingering like she was considering claiming it. The jewelry Vincent had given me over 15 years, engagement ring excluded. Furniture I'd chosen and paid for with marital money, art on the walls. No, dear, those are marital assets. Vincent is entitled to them. She packed my remaining belongings into black trash bags, not boxes, trash bags. Like I was refused being taken to the curb, and through every indignity I played the role perfectly. I cried when they could see. I spoke softly, hesitantly. I looked tired, defeated, barely holding on. Because that's exactly what they all needed to believe. But the deepest wound wasn't Vincent, wasn't Lorraine, wasn't even Brittany strutting around my house. It was my best friend, Diane Holloway. We'd known each other since high school. 20 years of friendship. Breakups, first jobs, pregnancies, secrets, celebrations. She'd been there for everything. She was the first person I called after Vincent's announcement. She came over with 2 bottles of wine, sat with me on the couch, let me cry on her shoulder. She said all the right things. You deserve so much better. He's making the biggest mistake of his life. I'm here for you always, day or night. But something felt off from the start. Little inconsistencies. I'd mentioned to Diane that I was thinking about fighting for the house. The next day, Tyler would come home saying, "Dad said you're not getting the house. It's pointless to try." I'd tell Diane I was looking at apartments in a specific neighborhood. Suddenly, Vincent would make a casual comment. "That area's way too expensive for you now." I should have seen it sooner. The way Diane's eyes always lit up when Vincent entered a room. The way she laughed a little too hard at his jokes. The way she always asked about him first whenever we talked. "How's Vincent doing? How's the business? Is Vincent happy?" She'd been carrying a torch for my husband for 20 years. And Vincent, ever the collector of female admiration, knew exactly how to use it. He made her feel special, important. He probably dropped hints about once the divorce is final. Gave her just enough hope to keep her loyal. My best friend of 2 decades had become his informant. All for some flirting and empty promises. And then there was Tyler. My beautiful, smart, observant son. He saw everything. Brittany prancing around the house in tiny shorts. His grandmother packing my life into garbage bags. His father treating me like I no longer existed. And worst of all, Vincent started poisoning him slowly. Little comments whispered when I wasn't around. "Your mom's making this harder than it needs to be. I just want everyone to be happy, but she won't let go. I'm trying to be fair, son, but she's dragging it out." Tyler started pulling away from me, not angry exactly, just distant, confused, looking at me sometimes like I was the problem, like I was the one destroying our family. That pain was a knife that twisted daily. Watching my son question me because his father was so convincing, so manipulative. But even then, I stayed calm. I hired a lawyer, Nina Castellano, 52 years old, recommended by an old contact from the firm, sharp as a blade, zero tolerance for nonsense. She reviewed my situation, looked at the marital assets, and laid out the battle plan. "You helped build this business from nothing. You're entitled to half of everything, the house, the company, the accounts. We fight." I looked at her for a long moment. "What if I don't want to fight?" She stared at me like I'd suggested sending Vincent a thank you card and fruit basket. She thought grief had broken me. She thought I was too depressed, too beaten down to stand up for myself. She had no idea I was already winning. I moved into a small 2-bedroom apartment with Tyler. Cramped kitchen. Boxes stacked in corners because half our things didn't fit. A far cry from the gated mansion. Meanwhile, Vincent posted glowing photos with Brittany. "New chapter, new energy. Blessed," Lorraine commented. "So happy for you, sweetheart. You deserve joy." My sister called furious. "You need a shark lawyer. Take him for everything." Everyone had advice. Everyone thought they knew what I should do. Everyone saw a woman who'd given up. Everyone was wrong. Because being underestimated has one huge advantage. People stop watching you carefully. They get sloppy. They reveal everything. And that's exactly when you strike. I sat across from Nina one afternoon and placed 3 thick binders on her desk. 3 years of evidence. Every mortgage document. Every hidden loan. Every suspicious transfer. Every piece of proof that Vincent's empire was a house of cards built on nearly $2 million of debt. She read in silence for almost an hour. When she finally looked up, her expression had completely changed. "You've known for 3 years. I was waiting for him to leave. I knew he would eventually. And when he demanded everything, he demanded all the debt too." She leaned back in her chair. A slow, dangerous smile spread across her face. "Mrs. Dunst, I believe I owe you an apology. I thought you'd given up." I smiled back. "Everyone thinks that. That's kind of the point." The trap was built. The evidence was airtight. All I had to do now was let Vincent believe he was winning. And no one plays gracious loser better than a woman who's been rehearsing for 15 years. The final 3 months became my masterpiece performance. I showed up to mediation sessions with red-rimmed eyes and trembling hands. I spoke softly, hesitantly, like confidence had been beaten out of me. I asked for almost nothing, $50,000 cash, my personal belongings, shared custody of Tyler. Vincent agreed immediately. He was probably braced for a war over half of everything. Instead, I was handing him the keys to his kingdom on a silver platter. He started getting careless, arrogant. He bought himself a $15,000 watch, charged to the business account, naturally, and wore it to our next mediation, making sure I noticed. He took Brittany to La Maison, the French restaurant where we'd celebrated our 10th anniversary, and posted photos. Life is better with the right person. Brittany began redecorating my house. New furniture in the living room, new art on the walls, and then the ultimate insult, she painted my kitchen. I had spent 3 weeks choosing the perfect sage green, swatches on the walls, testing in morning light, afternoon light, evening light. It was my favorite room in the entire house. She painted over it with generic builder-grade gray, like it was nothing, gray, like her personality, like her future once the truth came out, very fitting. Diane kept calling, fishing for information under the guise of concern. I fed her exactly what Vincent wanted to hear, lines like, "I just want it to be over. I can't fight anymore. I don't have the energy." Within hours, Vincent would relax further, grow bolder. He started bragging to his golf buddies. She didn't even fight, offered her a fair deal, and she took it without a word. Lorraine spread stories at book club, at church, at every social event. Vincent is keeping everything. That woman didn't get a dime. I always knew she wasn't strong enough for my son. Meanwhile, Tyler watched. My smart, observant son noticed things that didn't add up. The new watch when Vincent claimed money was tight. Brittany's endless shopping bags when his dad said they couldn't afford Tyler's school trip. He started asking questions, quiet ones. At my tiny apartment one evening, he sat at my second-hand kitchen table and looked at me with serious eyes. "Mom, is Dad actually rich?" I looked back at him. "What do you think?" He was quiet for a long time. "I think he's pretending." I reached across and squeezed his hand. "Trust me, just a little longer." Behind the scenes, Nina worked with surgical precision. The main agreement was clear. I relinquished all claims to marital property. House, business, vehicles, everything to Vincent. In exchange, my modest $50,000. But attached was the addendum, a detailed liability disclosure statement. Every debt, every mortgage, every loan, every obligation tied to those assets. When Vincent signed, he would legally assume all of it. Sole responsibility. 2 weeks before the final hearing, Harold called Nina with concerns. "My client is assuming significant assets. I'd like a full financial audit first." Nina stayed neutral. "Of course, we'll provide whatever documentation you need." But when Harold raised it with Vincent, my soon-to-be ex shut it down. "No audit, I built that company. I know exactly what it's worth. I'm not paying accountants to tell me what I already know. Brittany wants this done. I want this done. No delays." Harold pushed. "I strongly recommend verifying the values. This is significant exposure." Vincent refused. Harold prepared a waiver, documenting that he had advised an independent review, and Vincent was declining against counsel. Vincent signed it without reading. Never underestimate an impatient girlfriend's power to make a man skip fine print. The night before the hearing, Vincent texted me, "Thank you for not making this ugly." I stared at that message for a long time. 15 years of building his business, raising his son, managing his life. And he was thanking me for not making things difficult while he threw me away. I typed back, "I just want what's best for Tyler." What was best for Tyler? His trust fund, his future secured, and a father about to learn the most expensive lesson of his life. Thursday morning, 9 a.m. Courtroom 4B, I remember every detail. The smell of polished wood and old paper, sunlight streaming through tall windows, the quiet murmur of lawyers shuffling files. Vincent arrived first, wearing his best charcoal suit, the one I'd helped him pick out years ago, and his new watch catching the light. He looked confident, relaxed, like a man about to close the deal of his life. Brittany waited in the hallway, not allowed inside, but there for moral support. Lorraine sat in the gallery, dressed for celebration. I arrived minutes later, simple navy dress. No jewelry, hair in a low bun, eyes tired, the perfect image of defeat. Judge Patricia Holden entered, early 60s, silver hair. Reading glasses, 30 years on the family court bench. She'd seen every trick, every lie, every manipulation. Nothing surprised her anymore. She reviewed the file briefly. Mercer versus Mercer, final dissolution hearing. The parties have reached an agreement. Harold stood first. Yes, Your Honor. My client Vincent Mercer is assuming all marital assets including the residence, the real estate business, and vehicles. In exchange, Mrs. Dunst receives a $50,000 cash settlement. Nina confirmed. The judge looked directly at me, studied my face, searching for coercion, pressure, regret. Mrs. Dunst, I need to confirm you understand what you're agreeing to today. You're giving up claim to substantial property, the home, the business you helped build. Are you certain this is what you want? I kept my voice soft, slightly unsteady. Yes, Your Honor, I understand. And you're entering this voluntarily. No one is pressuring you? No, Your Honor. I looked down at my hands, then back up. I just want my husband to have everything he asked for. I want this to be over. The judge studied me another long moment. I could see her internal debate, whether to push harder, order a continuance, protect what looked like a terrible deal. But I was represented. I was answering clearly. I was an adult making my own choice. Very well. Let's proceed. The clerk passed the final documents, page after page. Signatures required throughout. Vincent signed eagerly, barely glancing. I signed slowly, deliberately, savoring every pen stroke. This was the moment I'd waited 3 years for. Across the room, Vincent glanced at Lorraine and smiled. She nodded approvingly. His phone buzzed, probably Brittany sending encouragement. He checked it. In court, during his own divorce. That's the kind of man he was. Harold did one final review. Main agreement, asset schedule, settlement terms, then the addendum, liability disclosure. I watched his face as he read. Confusion first, then recognition. He flipped back, then forward, hoping he'd misread. He hadn't. He went pale. Leaned toward Vincent, whispered urgently, "Sir, we need to talk." Vincent waved him off. "Not now, we're almost done." Harold's voice grew sharper. "You're assuming all the debt." Vincent turned. "What?" Harold pointed, papers rustling. "The mortgages, the business loans, the leases, it's all here. You're taking personal liability for everything." Vincent finally looked, really looked. I watched the color drain from his face. His hands started trembling. The papers shook like leaves. He stood abruptly, chair scraping. "This isn't right. She hid this from me. This is fraud." Judge Holden's voice cut like steel. "Mr. Mercer, sit down." He kept going, voice rising. "These numbers are fake. She manipulated." "Sit down," he sat, shaking. The judge reviewed the addendum. "Mr. Mercer, these are debts associated with assets you are claiming. Assets titled in your name, your business. Are you telling this court you don't know your own financial situation?" Silence. Harold cleared his throat. "Your Honor, I should note that I advised my client to conduct an independent financial review prior to signing. He declined. I have documentation." He produced the waiver. The judge read it. "So Mr. Mercer was advised to verify these figures. He chose not to. He signed acknowledging that choice." She looked at Vincent. "Is that correct?" He stared at the waiver like it was poison, his signature clear. A long pause. "Yes, then you assumed this risk voluntarily." Vincent turned to me, desperation breaking through. "You knew." His voice cracked. "You knew about all of this." I met his eyes calmly. "I was your bookkeeper for 11 years, Vincent. I knew about everything." His face cycled through emotions, confusion, rage, betrayal, fear, and finally realization, the full weight of what he'd done to himself. "I want to withdraw the agreement," he said, turning back to the judge. "I didn't understand what I was signing. This isn't fair." Judge Holden shook her head. "Mr. Mercer, you signed documents before this court stating you understood and agreed to all terms. You were represented by competent counsel. You declined review. Your wife disclosed everything required. These are your debts, your obligations." She paused. "The agreement is final." The gavel came down. "Mrs. Dunst, you have your settlement, Mr. Mercer, you have the assets as agreed, along with all associated liabilities. This marriage is dissolved." I stood, smoothed my dress, picked up my purse, looked at Vincent one last time. He was slumped, papers scattered, world collapsing. You said you wanted everything except Tyler, I said quietly. I gave you exactly what you asked for. I walked out without looking back. In the hallway, I heard Vincent yelling at Harold, demanding to know how this happened, threatening lawsuits. Harold's calm voice. I told you to get an audit. I have it in writing. You refused. Through the glass doors, I saw Brittany's face change as she overheard. Saw her look at Vincent, really look, and see not the successful man she thought she'd won, but a liar drowning in debt. She was gone before I reached the elevator, heels clicking fast on marble, not looking back. Outside, the April sunshine was warm. The sky was blue. Behind me, my ex-husband was screaming about fairness and fraud and how none of this was his fault. Ahead of me was a new life, smaller, simpler, but completely, entirely mine. The collapse happened faster than I expected. Within 2 weeks, Brittany moved out in the middle of the night, left a note. This isn't what I signed up for. Within a month, Vincent tried to sell the house. But when you owe more than it's worth, there are no buyers, only banks calling about missed payments. Within 2 months, vendors filed lawsuits, lines of credit frozen, equipment repossessed. Within 3 months, bankruptcy attorney meetings. The man who once bragged about his empire was now calculating which few assets he could protect from creditors. The answer, almost nothing. Lorraine's famous Christmas newsletter that year was very short. Vincent is exploring new opportunities. Yes, opportunities in debt restructuring. Diane called about a week after the hearing, voice shaking. I had no idea things were this bad. I'm so sorry, Alexis. I never meant. I didn't answer, didn't give her closure. Some friendships don't deserve second chances. 20 years sold for flirting and empty promises. She tried 3 more times, then stopped. Lorraine tried going through Tyler. Tell your mother I didn't know about the money problems. Tell her I'm sorry for how I treated her. Tell her I want to talk. Tyler looked at the woman who'd packed his mother's life into trash bags, who'd called her worthless, who'd sided with his father without question. He said, Mom's busy building her life. She doesn't have time for excuses. Tyler finally understood everything, not because I explained, because he watched it unfold. He saw the court documents, heard his father's excuses crumble, watched Brittany vanish, watched Lorraine scramble, watched the entire facade collapse. One evening, about a month after the divorce, he sat with me in my small apartment, the one with the sage-green kitchen I'd painted myself. You waited 3 years, he said quietly. You knew the whole time and you just waited. I wanted to make sure you were protected, I told him. No matter what happened between your father and me, I needed to know you'd be okay. He was quiet. Then he hugged me. A real hug. The kind I hadn't gotten from my teenage son in years. The kind that said, I understand. The kind that said, I'm proud of you. My $50,000 settlement went to stability. First and last month's rent, security deposit, basic furniture that wasn't falling apart. The trust fund stayed exactly where it was, growing quietly for Tyler's college, his first home, his future. And me, I finally chased the dream I'd put on hold at 23. I enrolled in interior design courses at the community college. Started small. My first real client was Sandra, a 52-year-old woman ending her own 28-year marriage. She stood in her empty new apartment, looking lost, and asked, How do you start over? I thought about it. 1 room at a time, I said. 1 color at a time, 1 day at a time. We painted her kitchen sage green. She cried when she saw it. Happy tears, she said. The color of hope. Of new beginnings. 3 months after the divorce was final, Vincent showed up at my apartment. I barely recognized him. Weight lost in all the wrong ways. Dark circles, wrinkled suit, his watch gone. He stood in my doorway and said, I didn't know it was this bad. I made mistakes. I know that now. But I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I looked at him, really looked. The man I'd loved for half my life. The man who'd thrown me away like trash. The man now drowning in consequences he'd created. Can we talk? He asked. Maybe we can figure something out. He couldn't even say the word help. I leaned against the doorframe. You asked for everything except Tyler, I said calmly. You got exactly what you wanted. Alexis, please. Goodbye, Vincent. I closed the door. He stood in the hallway for 10 minutes. I know because I watched through the peephole while eating ice cream straight from the carton. Best show I'd ever seen. 5 stars. That night, after Tyler went to bed, I sat in my small living room and looked at my grandmother's photo on the shelf. Next to it was her recipe box, the one thing Lorraine had almost taken. The one thing that mattered most. You were right about everything, Grandma, I whispered. Keep your own money, know your worth, be patient, and never let anyone make you feel small. My apartment is quiet, small, nothing like the mansion I lived in for years. But every paint color is mine. Every piece of furniture is mine. Every decision is mine. And for the first time in longer than I can remember, I am free. Thank you for letting me tell you my story. If it gave you hope, strength, or even just satisfaction, pass it on. Someone out there needs to hear that patience isn't weakness, that silence can be strategy, that the best revenge is the one no one sees coming, and that you are always, always stronger than they think. Stay strong. Your moment is coming.